Hello there, it's Deborah Irene, and it is Thursday, March 26th, 2020. I have been doing a few videos since we have been isolated in Kansas City here this past week, and I've been doing them on Facebook Live, and it occurred to me I needed to do one on my YouTube channel. And I wanted to do it in the daytime because it's a beautiful sunny day here in Kansas City on what would have been opening day for the baseball season. But as with most other activities in the United States, that has been put on hold. So we're not able to start our baseball season. That's not the end of the world. Many more things have been put on hold, and there are many sick people out there. But what I've been trying to do in the evenings is to just read some of my stories to bring a little bit of hope to you as we're all isolating ourselves and keeping our social distance. And since today would have been the opening day of baseball season, and I love baseball, I thought I would read to you one of my baseball stories in my book, Someday I Will Write. And last night I read a story from the section, A Time to Hope and a Time for Faith. And this story, one of my baseball stories, is in the last section, Part 5, A Time to Work and a Time to Play. And this particular story was written back in 2012 as a blog. Now, I want to preface this by saying that I have been a long-time Kansas City resident. I've lived here for 40 years, and so a lot has gone on in 40 years. But this particular blog I wrote back in 2012. It's chapter 46, and I titled this, The Way We Were. I went to my first Royals baseball game of the season last week, and oh, the memories that were stirred. I've loved the game my entire life. When I moved to the Midwest with my family from California at the age of 10, I remember being a die-hard Dodgers fan, along with my dad. It took a year or two to be converted to a Cardinals fan, but then, much to the dismay of my cousin Benton, who moved the same time we did, I finally converted. The days of Bob Gibson, Steve Carlton, Orlando Cepeda, Lou Brock, Tim McCarver, and Joe Torre. I knew the lineup, and I knew them all. One of my dreams was to someday attend a professional game. I wanted to play baseball instead of softball, but that wasn't allowed. I settled northwest of my southern Missouri home as an adult in Kansas City and finally converted to a Royals fan. What a fabulous team they had in the day. George Brett, Frank White, Willie Wilson, Hal McRae, Dennis Leonard, Brett Saberhagen, Paul Splittorff, Amos Otis, Dan Quisenberry, Charlie Lee Brandt, John Mayberry, and Fred Patek, to name a few, or a lot. In those days, you had to purchase tickets far in advance simply to get nosebleed seats, unless you were fortunate enough to be a season ticket holder. Being the early days of my career, that seemed an impossible feat. But I thought, maybe someday when I am more established. I attended my first professional baseball game with my dad and sister at Kauffman Stadium, then known as Royals Stadium, in my early 20s. I remember being invited by a friend a couple of times to sit with her in her mom's company's season ticket seats, a few rows back from the third base dugout. What a treat. I watched the kissing bandit make her way down the aisle past us and onto the field to lay one on George Brett one of those special Sunday afternoons. Eventually, that came to a halt, and I remember Mr. and Mrs. Kaufman leaning out from their suite window, waving to the crowd between innings, Mrs. K waving her white hanky slowly back and forth like the royal lady she was. Oh yes, the white hanky. Well, this is the way I remember the invention of the rally rag. Perhaps someone else came up with it before then, but this is my recollection of the first time in Kansas City. I was listening to the game on the radio one evening. The Royals were down a few runs late in the game. We were closing the gap, and maybe there were even 2 outs. I remember the announcer saying Frank White had picked up a towel in the dugout and waved it around to get everyone pumped up. Well, it worked, and it spread like wildfire. Fans and players alike started waving anything white they could find. The Royals did come back and win that game, and thus marked the debut of the rally rag. Yes, those were the days. It was acceptable in those days to even skip the last part of the church service on Sunday morning if you were lucky enough to have those seats for an afternoon game. How fitting it was that the year my first son was born, the Royals finally won the World Series. He was 4 months old when I spread out a blanket on the living room floor, dressed him in his number 5 George Brett suit, and we watched the final game. I had entered my name in the selection process that year to buy American League playoff tickets and was present at Game 3 on a Friday night when George hit 2 home runs. I tried desperately to describe those days to my sons several years later, when the Royals struggled to stay out of the cellar. The boys simply couldn't imagine. They were busy playing the game themselves, and so was I, managing 2 of their teams and traveling across the country with another one playing on a hotshot team. You couldn't live in our house and not play baseball. We played baseball spring, summer, and fall with a brief break in the dead of winter. We had a batting cage in the backyard and practiced in a cave in the winter. Our bags were full of bats and gloves of all colors, shapes, sizes, and impressive names, the latest and greatest. And of course, it was acceptable to wear your baseball uniform to church if you had an early afternoon game on Sunday. One time, a coworker told me, "I know you have great faith, and God is number 1 in your life, but baseball is running a close second," as he positioned his left hand about an inch under his right. Another coworker, a few years my senior, who was well past the baseball days of her sons, told me, "There is life after baseball, and it will be okay." I couldn't imagine that when I was in the midst of it all. When I was sitting back last week, taking in the sights of the renovated Kauffman Stadium, I couldn't help but reflect on those good old baseball days. I wonder if the Kauffmans would approve of all these changes. Would they like the seats that took over part of the outfield fountains? I think Mrs. K would be glad to see they didn't remove the fountains completely. I think they would like that we still boast the crest, a crown scoreboard bigger and better. Those lights engulfing the circumference of the field, flashing any stat or information you might want to know, are quite impressive. I think they would love the natural grass infield and outfield. The blue seats are more appropriate for our team name, and I think they would be pleased to know that the original orange seats are now used at a local high school. Maybe they would have dinner from time to time in the Crown Club, and maybe even take a seat in the front row behind home plate on occasion. They would likely be bombarded in the Diamond Club, so I doubt you would see them there. Would they mind that "Thank God I'm a Country Boy" was replaced with "Friends in Low Places"? Not sure about that one. Being the entrepreneur that he was, Mr. K would probably understand that there is a time and season for change. And I know they would be proud to host this year's All-Star Game. I remember one of my favorite quotes from Mr. K went something like this: "If you want to become a millionaire, be a billionaire and buy the Royals." He lost money for the greater cause, the benefit of the residents of the greater Kansas City area, the continued presence of a Major League Baseball team. I, for one, am thankful for all of the Kauffman contributions to the Kansas City community that continue to this day, and hope that the stadium will forever be called Kauffman Stadium, because that's what it truly is. My sons are grown now, and my life today is different. A demanding corporate career, writing, attending the ballet in the new magnificent Kauffman Center for the Performing Arts, an evening of ballroom dancing once or twice a week, an occasional dinner out with family and friends, and a concert or ball game a few times per year. And I love that girl time with sisters and close friends. Then I see that mother struggling to juggle everything. She loads her gang into the SUV, drops one off at a practice as she drives another to a game. If she's lucky, she might actually get to see the entire game if she can arrange a ride for the one at practice. And then she chooses her days carefully when asking to leave work early in time to see at least a few innings of her high school son's game that starts at 4 p.m. And hopefully she arrives in time to see the game of his life, hitting a ball 400 feet against the wind to propel his team to victory, or watch him strike out the side to shut the other team down. Or perhaps she is lucky enough to have someone capture the moment she missed, frame by frame, on camera. I have empathy for her, but can without reservation say there is life after baseball, and it will be okay. Love the game, and life continues on. And as I stated, I wrote that in May of 2012. There is another story in this book where I captured the events and the atmosphere a few years later in 2014 when the Royals finally, after almost 30 years, made it to the postseason again. What an exciting time that was. But today, we're not going to be playing baseball. Today, we have to wait. And whether you're in Kansas City, or another town, you have your traditions and your stories. And I know that if you're a baseball fan, you're feeling the same way we do here, that we're missing out. But I can assure you that there will come a day where things will be somewhat normal again. We will go to the office again. If you're a mother or a father, you will see your son play baseball again or your daughter play softball. And we will see that first game. In Kansas City, we were looking forward to a new year, a new coach, a new owner. Hopes were high. And there's still hope, just like I've been saying all week. There is still hope. We will play again, and we will be united again. Always have hope. It's Deborah Irene, and take care.